Hi everyone, today we're doing an interview in React Native and I have my guest here, Tony, and also who's going to be interviewee. And today we both interviewed a lot of people and had interviews both in React and React Native. And those kind of interviews are those like practical interviews which test your day-to-day capabilities of how you like perform certain tasks are becoming more and more common in the industry. So decided to do this quick interview to share some tips, also do some coding live, and yeah, see if it's helpful for you. Okay, Tony, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hello everyone. Judy, thank you so much for having me. So my name is Tony. I've been a mobile app developer for roughly 4 or 5 years now. Started out as a chemist actually, so studied that in school. Transitioned over to full stack development, and then kind of pigeonholed, or sorry, rather organically transitioned over to mobile. So if anybody has any mobile questions, more than happy to help.
Yep, please let us know in the comments. Okay, so the format of this interview would be as per usual. I'm gonna ask you questions about like just topics and your challenges that you have, and then we're gonna dive into coding. So let's get started with tell us why are you applying to Web Decoded LLC?
I mean, to be honest, I have known Judy for a while now, and when she first told me about starting the channel, no, I was genuinely excited and happy for her to take on this new endeavor. So, pretty exciting space, to be honest. Just being able to share content, share knowledge, information, and this is definitely not a one-way street at all, right? This is meant to be a more collaborative effort between us and, of course, viewers via comments or otherwise. So, yeah, really excited to be doing this.
Yeah, and I'm actually, well, Tony was the one who convinced me to learn React in the first place, and I did learn a lot of concept in React from Tony, so I guess this would be interesting to now test his knowledge. But okay, so let's get started with the questions itself. Can you explain how does the data flow work in React or React Native?
Yeah, so one of the popularities behind React is its one-way data flow. So when we're talking about React or React Native applications, data just goes one way in one direction.
If you want the data not to flow in one way only, I guess you use state management. So
Gotcha.
in terms of state management, one of the populars are context and Redux. So what's your experience with them, and like what are the different use cases you use one over the other?
Yeah, so Redux really was popular back in 2015 or so. And one of the benefits of it is that it markets itself as a state management process or state management manager container. And since React itself is just a vast tree of the different components, the state management helps you such that you don't have to pass props right throughout the different components, which can get really messy easily. So what Redux does is that everything falls under one single entity, right? This one giant object, and really any part of the components can reach up and sort of grab whatever information it needs to render. And then, as Judy mentioned about context, so this was sort of a spin-off of Redux in the sense that it got more fully integrated into the React library itself. And context is in a similar vein, as the name suggests, it provides information for any of the components that consumes from the context. So you'll see often code where when you have context, you have the sort of the provider side, which is just another. It's meant to be the mechanism through which the components can go and either put information in or extract information to render.
Great answer. All right, so now moving on to like conditional rendering. How do you handle? Do you use like ternary operator for it? Do you use like the add, the add signs, or?
Yeah, so I guess one of the nice things about the conditional rendering is that you can treat it really like any conditional statement, right? So if you think about just the rendered components as like I always like to imagine it as different boxes that exist on the screen or the mobile application, and depending on the condition, we can say either yes, render this, or don't render it. So for example, like a login button or even the text on the button, if we want to say login, okay, then if some condition is satisfied, present the login on the button text. If not, then say log out, right, for the authenticated user. So really, yeah, it makes it very easy to build that logic directly into the UI, where you do treat your components as the different, just like any piece of code.
And then this is more, I guess, React Native specific question. What is the differences between like online and offline first applications?
Yeah, so as I'm sure everybody has a mobile phone device, and oftentimes because there's some spotty internet or really like no internet connection at all, with this offline first application is that paradigm where you can use your phone and interact with any of the apps without an internet connection. So some of the really great players in this is, for example, Slack, the communication app company. They do a very good job with kind of catering to the users in a way that you can type out your message, even press send, but in reality the message hasn't been sent yet because obviously due to the lack of that internet connection. But then once you're online, then the message is automatically sent out for you. And just to dive a little bit more into this concept, there's different various packages and libraries out there to help set up your application such that it can offer kind of offline capabilities, so users don't always need to have an internet connection to use your application. And sorry, one last thing is that really, in a nutshell, it's just having a local database set up on the phone, and then storing whatever information, grabbing whatever information, and then passing that around.
Okay. And then this is not an interview question, but is there any tips? Usually here interview asks if you have any questions, but is there any tips you'd like to share for the audience, whether it's for interviews in general or the job search?
Yeah, I guess when it comes to job search, just show your passion. I think throughout, all the jobs that I got was really just showing that A, I know what I'm talking about, and B, showing that it's not just I memorize something and then just regurgitate it out, but rather, oh cool, like I'm actually interested in these concepts or these topics, and can talk about them, be excited to talk about those things.
So problem number one, I just sent you a link to API. Can you fetch the data from the API when the page application loads? So that's the URL.
Yep. Yeah. So just leave it down here.
And then once you fetch the data, just console log it so we can look at it.
Sure. So here is the data. So one of the APIs provided is called fetch in React Native. So pretty straightforward. Just going to copy this and put it here, change out the URL. And as the example showed, you can put in different parameters, right, if you wish, but to handle the response, we use this promise-based form. So just copy the whole thing. Change the name, and then just take this part. we want to make sure that when the response comes, convert it to JSON, and then instead of returning, we're just going to console log for now. And of course, to catch any errors if there are to be any. So let's see if we want to. So debugging is similar to React in React Native, where you can pull up the console in your browser, and then all of this is information for the native parts of the app. We'll just get rid of those. And then if we refresh, oh, my bad. I need to actually call the endpoint for it to make the fetch.
Yeah, so when you're calling, where are you doing that?
Oh, so I mean, for now I'm just calling it directly within the component. So here we have this app component, and when it renders going from top to bottom, it'll just invoke this method, and of course render what's returned. Has it not logged?
Oh, it's there.
Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah, so that took a while, but so here, if we blow this up a bit, this is the array that comes back. If we look at the first item, we have a category, description, etc., etc.
Okay. So I guess for the next steps, would you be able to display, create a list and display just the title?
Yeah.
Title, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Title.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah. So here we use the fetch API. So there's another one called FlatList in React Native. So this is probably one of the more popular list components. It really provides a nice abstraction for you to render all kinds of lists. So here in my component.
So before we jump into the flat list, I guess, where are you storing the data when it's coming back?
Sure. So before I actually render the list, for now we just console log what came back. But part of React is, or rather, React provides these hooks that can be used to store information. So here I'm going to say this data and set data. I'm going to use state to capture the data that's returned. Here, I'm going to make sure to do the imports. So React, also use state. And before I was just calling the endpoint here, but there's also another one called useEffect, which can help us to actually invoke the function when the application or when this component is launched. So okay, just move this down. Oops. Okay, so within my useEffect, I'll be invoking this function.
Okay, and then when does the useEffect run? When the application launches, right?
Yeah, so useEffect runs at every cycle. So this is basically a catch-all for your React lifecycle methods for those that are familiar with those. But think of it as just something. So this function inside useEffect is invoked every single time. When anything changes to the component. Yeah, so here in my promise, I changed instead of console logging, I'm just setting data. so that this data variable is the JSON.
And this data variable, what kind of, I guess, what type of variable is it? It's an object, array?
Yeah, so this is an object, or because here I'm initializing the state to be an object.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So coming back here to the FlatList, just going to go ahead and get the template from documentation. Again, making sure I import. Oops, ignore the oh, sorry about that. It should be, that's my mistake. Okay. And then, so here the data, again, we're setting the data to be this. We also need the render item, which is the component that renders each item that comes through. So grab that. And then, so before we saw that each element is an object that contains the title property. So here I'll just use the text. Okay. And yeah, that should do it. So,
Great.
Yep, grabbed all the titles for each element and just rendered it in its own row. Obviously no CSS yet, but
yeah,
this is just the information.
We don't need that for this one. Okay, so for the next part, let's make this more like Shopify on the mobile app style, or Instagram, where you have an image, title, and the description. Maybe if we show title and the price, that also.
Okay, so show image, description. Oh, what was the other one?
Image, description, the price.
Price. Okay. So so here in our render item, we just have the text or the title for now. We can also show the image using the image tag. This is provided by React Native. Sorry, this is so in React Native, the view tag is equivalent more or less to div on the web. And then here an image takes a source. Oops, or rather, let me what we want is image that fetches from okay, so these are just endpoints to JPEGs. So here we can move this back instead of require is it yeah, URI. So here, yeah, just copy this. Okay. And so for the URI, it would be item dot, is it called image? Okay. Oh, image not defined. So go up here and require that. I think for image specifically, you do have to specify the style. So like here, yeah. Okay. So here we'll just do like 10 and 10 for now. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, and there's like super tiny. So blow that up a little bit. And there we are.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do the description and the price.
Sure. So title, image. For description, again, I'll just put it in a text tag. So in the description, and then finally the price. Save that, and there we have everything displayed.
Great. Okay, so this is the last part of your interview, and in this part we want to give users ability to add new products. So there would be like a little input box or like form at the top of the list, where it would take different fields required for the product and then be like add button. As for the API to make the call, so what the adding would do is it would send a request to the API. Mm-hmm. For the request, I in the chat messaged you what URL you can use, and yeah, if you can paste it in there. We're making post requests to the same endpoint.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, sounds good. Let me just move this to another method. We'll call push product. Okay. Great. Ignoring the sort of alignment, code alignment for now. What we want to do is okay, let's put this at the top. We're gonna need some input. So text input. Again, this one takes some properties which we'll fill out later. And then we need that button.
Yeah, for the simplicity, so we don't have to duplicate, you can have price and other categories hard-coded, just have like title the users can input.
Oh, okay.
And then the same logic would apply to other fields.
Yeah, for sure. Let me double check that. Okay, so text input and button are imported. Coming back here to documentation for text input. Right, so let's see. Copy these parameters for text input. So I'm just going to clean up a little bit where I collapse the methods that won't be used. Okay. All right, so here we have our text input. Earlier, we were talking about setting use state to capture data. So here, likewise, we want to make sure we capture the input that users are typing in. So we use again use state. And because it's text, we'll set it to an empty string for now. So on change text, we'll say. So every time a user types something, we'll update that input. Here, the value is the itself. Placeholder, we'll call it title. And so I guess this is one of the interesting aspects of it is the keyboard type. So if you guys notice, on your phones, you have different types such as numbers or the full keypad itself. For now, we don't want numeric, so if we get rid of that, I'll just default to the generic keyboard. Okay, save that, fix any issues. So, here for my button. Again, coming back to documentation. Let's look up. Oops.
I think you just need to pass like the title equals add or something.
Yeah. Title will call submit, then on press. Here we were calling this method. Okay, see that? Great. Now we have our submit button up here. Text input. Okay, so I do need to put some styles in so that it'll show up. For now,
Just the border should be fine.
yeah. Okay. Nice. We have a little box. We can put in a title. So throw in some title. And then coming back here into submitting products, we want to make sure that title takes on the value of our input, and then everything else will keep.
Timer maker like it.
Yeah. We'll keep static everything else.
Okay, cool. Let's test it out.
All right. So here we have, let's say, new product. If we press submit, nothing happens. Well, because here we have, well, actually, we might be able to see it in the console log. If we come check out the debugger. Oh, nice. We get an ID back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's been added because it was 20 previously. All right. We don't have to do this part. I guess we're running out of time, but what else? So after you submit the product, send the request to API, what would you do next here?
Yeah, so some things that can help flesh out this app is have an automatic reload. So here we have just a promise where it's console logging, but we want to expand this to say refresh the screen. And we can set up a listener so that it'll do that, just to show that we have submitted. If we refresh, reload, should show. Does it not show up?
Oh, so actually, that's the thing. We're gonna. This is not gonna register your product because it's a mock API. So it's always the same product.
Oops. Okay.
That's why I asked you what would you do next. So you would have to, if you're continuing this, you'd have to add it to your current list.
Yeah.
But yeah, great answer. That's correct. And in terms of like other like next steps before you deploy this, what are the things you would look at? That's one question. And another would be, let's say if the list is very long, right? What would you want to do in that case?
Yeah, so
more like optimization of large data.
Sure. So to answer the second part of the question, one of the just look through the documentation. So one of the properties for FlatList is this continuous scroll. Let's see. Initial. Yeah. So actually, on and so yeah. So these are, I guess, the more appropriate fields to look into. So basically, as the name suggests, on and reach. So when you hit the bottom of the list, you can go ahead and fetch more. So that way, you can kind of paginate your list to to show however many as you want and fetch more when a user has reached the end to create that continuous scroll effect.
Okay, great. Hello, this is HR calling. We would like to inform you that you got the job.
Oh
How
my
do you
god!
feel?
Thank you so much. I'm flattered. Yeah, I mean, thank you for the offer. I would like to take a few days to consider it and think things through.
I'm offended.
No,
But take your time. We understand.
yeah, it's meant to be more like just. It's not meant to be offend or anything like that, right? So business is all about just making sure you don't sabotage yourself. If you accept the offer right away, then a lot of times you get you get lowball, right, in the negotiation phase. So
Yep. So what Tony's gonna do right now is he's gonna talk to other companies and then come back with some other offers and negotiate his salary. But okay, so thank you so much for coming on my interview. How did you feel about it?
yeah, I mean to be honest, I was pretty nervous. But I think it's a great exercise and experience. So for anybody out there, find a friend, colleague, whatever, and just go ahead and give it a try. It's all about stepping out of your comfort zone, and yeah, it was fun.
And so here's my feedback for you.
Okay.
I like that what he did is that he was explaining, and while you were coding or before like doing something, you maybe ask a question, which is like very important to always, even if they tell you something and you know for sure and you understand what they're telling you, just to clarify, because what they really are checking is that not that if you understand or not for the first time, that's not important, but they're checking, especially for the junior developers, that you're not going to build something and push something to the code that's going to like break things or it was unclear. So that's what they're testing. That's one thing. And yeah, I think overall you did great. You passed the test. One thing I would do differently would be maybe before jumping into like showing things, like I guess it's always good to have the state, create the state first, figure out where you're gonna like set that part up and then display things. But it was great, and yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Julie, and best of luck to everyone out there.
And yeah, let us know if you guys want to see more of this type of interview live coding videos.